Well, hi and welcome in Food FAQers. I'm Mariela,
And I'm Eric.
and today we're talking about something real close to home.
Yeah, it's something special to us.
Yeah, we grew up in South Florida. Really, it's Miami. It's not Florida.
Keep that in
Different.
mind.
It's different. Yeah. When
Yeah.
I say I'm from Florida, I don't mean like,
It's funny whenever I talk to people and say, "Oh, I'm going back home," they always say, "Oh, you're going to Florida," and I always correct them and say, "No, I'm going to Miami."
different.
Miamians, you never, at least all Miamians I know,
The good
you
ones.
never say, "Oh, I'm going to Florida." You say, "I'm going to Miami."
Right. And this place has a lot of things wrong with it. And I could sit here all day and tell you them, but food is not one of them.
Correct.
The food here is freaking phenomenal, and it's because of the really deep Cuban roots that we have here. And because of that, we're going to be talking about Havana nights, or today is more like a Havana afternoon.
I like that.
You like it?
I do. Well, it's close to us. So I have a Cuban mother
Mm-hmm.
and I have an Anglo father, but we spent more time. My father flew as a pilot, so we spent more time with the Hispanic side of my family.
Mm-hmm.
Mariela comes from both Cuban parents.
Right. Yeah.
So this is going to be kind of fun. I think it's going to be a couple episodes of just a lot of fun chatting, and we are going to bring our Cuban food that we grew up with to everybody else, and we're going to make it simple and easy and fun for everybody to enjoy.
And legit, not what you're getting where you're at if you're not here.
No.
Right? Because Eric's told me the nightmare stories of the horrible things that they do in the name of Cuban food.
It's really disgusting.
It's an outrage.
So if you think you're getting Cuban food, you're not. But as someone who has lived all over the country, if we want, towards the end of this episode, I will tell you, if you're in a Cuban restaurant, what things to look for to see if you're in a legitimate Cuban restaurant. There's two things.
That's
And
insider
I'll tell it at the
shit.
end of the episode. It's insiders, two things, and I will tell you what those two things are.
Okay.
So let's
I
kick
like
it off,
this.
Madi.
Yes. And if you guys like these episodes and you want us to get like really deep into that Cuban stuff, like how to make croquetas and like real deal stuff, let us know and we'll be happy to get into it. These recipes, they're going to be a little different, right? We're kind of going to give you like an overview and a simple way to do it regardless of where you are. And we're going to start with a daiquiri, which we talked about once before. Why are we revisiting it?
So we're revisiting it because, when we talk about a daiquiri, we talk about an Americanized version of a daiquiri. But today we are going to talk about the original daiquiri, which, by the way, is a super simple recipe. So this recipe did originate in Cuba around 1890s.
That's so cool.
It is pretty cool. There is a little town in Cuba that it is daiquiri. And
Really?
I actually had to ask my mother how to properly pronounce it.
Yeah.
And she did.
It was
And
daiquiri or something.
basically, yeah, exactly. And so this drink, though, Madi, we are going to give an homage to my Pampa, who was my grandfather, who was an amazing man. He was born in a city called Santiago, Cuba, back in 1922.
Mm-hmm.
And Pampa did leave this earth in 2014. So we miss him
Dearly.
a lot. We miss Abba and Pampa a lot. And so daiquiri is 14 miles east of Santiago. So the daiquiri is thought to be invented by actually an American mining engineer named Jennings Cox. And it was then introduced to America about 10 years later by a U.S. naval officer. So anyways, let's get to it. Really, really easy, Madi. Really refreshing. Great for summertime.
Love.
So it's a simple recipe. You're going to take 2 ounces of rum. The rum is clear rum, by the way.
Okay, I was gonna ask
2 ounces
you.
of clear rum. Yes, it is 2 ounces of clear rum and 1 ounce of lime juice and about 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup. And we've gone over what simple syrup is, which is just equal parts sugar, water. You boil it until you basically have it's basically dissolved into a syrup. It's really easy to make. When it cools down, you can bottle it, keep it in your refrigerator for a couple days, and it will last.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, 3/4 of an ounce is literally just, a squeeze of a bottle. So it's just a very small amount. And that's it. That's the recipe. You shake it together and you pour it in a glass, and you can use a little lime wedge or a little lime round to garnish it with. And that's it. It is simple. It is easy, delicious. And it is a Cuban beverage.
This is so cool that I'm learning this. I had no idea that it was Cuban. And really, what we do here in America in general is take things like this and then make them into a slushie because it's beautiful here. I mean, I'm not knocking it.
Right.
But in America, this is a glorified slushie with alcohol in it.
Right. It's like an adult Slurpee, which
Right.
don't get me wrong, is delicious.
Yes.
Okay, I freaking love them. But this is the originating. And if we want to get really into, the little bit of culture here, we tend to forget also the Bacardi family is a Cuban family.
That's right.
Bacardi was invented in Cuba. So that's kind of a cool little backstory also.
I feel like we sound like, that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, like the Greeks who think they invented everything. That's us right now.
That's exactly who we are.
But it's true. And this original recipe, to me, it's kind of reminiscent of like a lemonade almost.
Yeah.
And how refreshing is that for summer? It's like a sexy little Latin lemonade. We should call it that.
A Latin lemonade. Exactly. And it's 3 ingredients. And these are ingredients most all of us have in our home right now that you can run and make it chilled. And especially these summers where it's getting hot. It was 94 degrees the other day in DC.
God, I sweat as soon as I go out the freaking door. It's so disgusting and humid.
That's gross over there. It is gross.
My eyeglasses get foggy just from breathing.
That's disgusting. The high today, though, I think was 75 and the low was 50 something, but still
tolerable.
94, not making look forward to the next couple months.
Yeah. So we're doing kind of a like Havana Nights lunch edition, right? And for me, a sandwich is lunch generally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's kind of my favorite type of lunch because it has all the components of a real meal. It has some kind of protein, some kind of starch. And then I don't know, it's handheld. It's perfect. I was thinking everyone knows what a Cuban sandwich is, right? You get the Cuban bread, pickles, ham, Swiss, roasted pork, and you press it, right? But to me, like a panini. I've tried Cuban sandwiches in other places and nobody makes them right because they can't get the right bread. The Cuban bread that we are used to is only here. It does not travel. So I wanted to give you a recipe for a sandwich that you can actually duplicate without using like ciabatta bread, which is an abomination to a Cuban sandwich. Okay?
Abomination.
Abomination. So this sandwich is similar, called a medianoche. Every time I speak Spanish, I feel like Giada De Laurentiis talking about spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
And I'm not an asshole, but it's really called medianoche, which means midnight. And generally it's an eggy, like almost like a challah, I would say.
That's a good way to describe it.
Sweet bread. And it's always in like a teardrop, not a teardrop, but I don't know what that shape would be, like a oval, not an oval.
Think of like a large hot dog bun.
Yeah, I'd say that.
A large hot dog bun.
Yeah, they're big, like bigger than maybe your hand, right? Like the size of your forearm, depending on your.
Yeah, it's big.
And then they put roasted pork in there. They put ham, pickles, mustard. Am I missing anybody?
Swiss cheese.
Swiss cheese, important. Swiss cheese is very important. And then they do press the sandwich as well.
Yes.
But if you can't find the bread, which chances are you won't, you can totally substitute this bread with Hawaiian rolls. And it is very much the same situation, especially if you pressed it. So you would just grab the rolls. I would open them in half, and then you put mustard. And then what I would do, I don't know if you want to eat pork that is roasted from the deli. So if you don't, I would totally substitute with a nice dry turkey, some ham, pickles, Swiss cheese, cover it up with the top part. And then you can even put it in the oven for if you want to put like a baking dish on top to like weight it and make it flatter. You can do that to give it that like crunchy exterior. And that's it. You cut them up and it's such a good little treat. And it's unexpected because when you have a little bit of sweetness in your bread and those very sour pickles and then that mustard, I don't know about you, but mustard is a love language for me. And I love all different kinds of mustard.
Right.
I really enjoy, for this, I would just use regular yellow mustard, but I love me some super grainy mustard. I bought some at Trader Joe's and my God, nobody likes it except for me in my house.
I love really good grainy mustard.
Right? Okay, good. I'm glad. So you gotta have the good taste, you know? So anyway, that is the medianoche that you can make at your house and it's all delicious.
So Mari, I was looking up medianoche really quickly online. So we're going to go to Wikipedia here for a minute.
Whoop, whoop.
And, we still can't always trust Wikipedia. But so it is believed, so that medianoche did come from Cuba. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why it's called medianoche is because it was a sandwich popularly served in Havana's nightclubs around midnight.
That is so cool.
So that's why it's called a medianoche. And did you know, so it is served, throughout, Cuban areas within the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cuban sandwich itself, there's a difference with the Cuban sandwich in Miami. And then there's a very popular Cuban sandwich in Tampa.
Yeah.
And so there's one main difference. I think it's the Cuban sandwich in Tampa. I think there's almost like a salami in it. Which
I saw something about that recently because they had some kind of competition. And
there is.
Y'all are
both
wrong.
cities apparently compete who had it here first.
Yeah.
And sorry, Tampa.
Sorry, but your bread sucks in Tampa. I've had
would you put a salami in there? That's an abomination.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna say. So my Tampa friends, you do not own that medianoche. Okay.
Wrong.
Yeah. Absolutely wrong. I love medianoches, and I think there is nothing more quintessential to a Cuban lunch,
right?
Than being served a medianoche. It kind of reminds me of Saturday afternoons,
right? And they're just even Cuban food, even if it's a sandwich, it's never going to be light. Cuban food is never light.
No, it really isn't. And I think we also need to go back and. In the Cuban culture, we talk about this episode being a Cuban lunch, and traditionally in Cuban culture, the lunch is the main meal of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the larger meal. So as we go into our Havana nights and we go into other recipes, when I would go have lunch at my grandparents' house, medianoche was more sometimes of actually a dinner. Whereas the actual Cuban lunch was the full
beans and rice and
beans,
meat.
rice, meat, things like that. It was the plantains. It was everything. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of neat growing up that way.
Kind of I'm looking at our menu, and so far we have little sandwiches and we have a drink. This is the walk of shame version.
This is
Cuban food.
This is, well, I think this is just a little dip your toes in it before we kind of really get into some of the fun Cuban stuff that we're going to do. And I love the way that you put a spin on this, Madi, because, you and I talked about when we were coming up with this, and I asked you, can you get pork at a deli? And you said, well, you can. And I know here I can't. So yeah. I think, something like dry turkey is going to give you that same texture as the dried pork. Because when the pork at the medianoche it's not fresh made pork. It is a day old pork. The sandwich is basically meant to use up your stuff that you had. And I think that what you did is a great turn on it. And the Hawaiian rolls, that's perfect because that's the same sweetness and it's awesome. I love
Delish.
that.
Of course, we're going to end it on a big old fat sweet note because that's what y'all like. Y'all like that.
Y'all like booze and sweets, just to let everybody know this.
Our favorite episodes are really about booze and sugar.
That's right. Someone please listen to our vegetable episodes.
Fucking delicious. I promise you, we would not recommend non-delicious vegetables. Okay. We like fat, booze, and sugar too. That's why we're here.
Exactly. But because y'all love fat and booze,
here we are.
We're back with fat and booze.
Give them what they want.
I'll give my new email address, fatandboozy@gmail.com.
Trademarked. Trademark. Patent pending.
Trademark. No one else can take it.
No, and that's ours.
That's right. Food FAQ.
All right. So how are we going to finish this sweet little slut meal of ours?
Sweet little fatty meal. So we're going to end it with a Tres Leches Cake. So Tres Leches just translates to 3 milks, and it's served cold. And I think that's something that I like to point out. When I moved away from Miami, 2009, and I moved out of Miami, and it was interesting that a lot of desserts in the rest of the country are served warm, but growing up, all our desserts were cold. So I think that's just it's just kind of interesting. So Tres Leches, it's like a sponge cake. And
what does that mean, Eric?
So a sponge cake is, a spongy cake.
So it just dry, it's drier.
It's okay. You know what it is? Almost think of a little bit denser angel food cake.
Mm-hmm.
And
Good.
That's probably the best way I can describe it, like a denser angel food cake. And basically you make this cake. The way you're going to make this cake is I've been able to find a simple way to do it. You're going to take a box of yellow cake, and to this box of yellow cake, you're going to add 4 eggs, 1 1/3 cup of whole milk, half a cup of butter, 4 teaspoons vanilla. So you're going to make this much larger than what it is. You're going to put it in a 13-by-9 pan, bake it at 350 for 35 minutes. The top, you want it just to be kind of golden brown. When it comes out, you're going to go ahead and you're going to poke a bunch of holes into this cake with your fork. On the side of your, get a bowl, and you're going to add a 12-ounce can of evaporated milk, a 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk, and 1/4 cup of whole milk. You're going to whisk that together, and then you're going to pour it over the cake.
Yum. Does the cake have to be hot or cold?
You know, I think the cake probably should be at least warm because you want it to absorb all the milks.
Agreed.
So you definitely want the cake to be warm and absorb all the milks. When that cake is done, you're going to take the cake and you're going to put it in the refrigerator. And you want the cake to sit there for at minimum 1 day, best 2 days, because you really want to get cold and absorb everything. The topping is really simple. It's a whipped topping. So you can just take about a pint of heavy whipping cream, 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, or if you're Mariela, I'm sorry, I just said brown sugar. It's powdered sugar, Mari.
It's in your brain now, baby.
It's in my brain, the brown sugar. So the recipe, you could do powdered sugar, but if you want to do Mari's brown sugar recipe, check out our episode on that. But you just add some brown sugar in there, whip it up, a little bit of vanilla extract, and that is what you're going to ice the cake with. Serve it very cold. And it is so good. I will say, if you're not used to the texture, it's a little different because it's wet.
I don't know, think of what you can compare this to. I mean, has everybody not had a tres leche? I think everybody's had one.
Tres leches is becoming much more popular. I can find it at places up here as opposed to when I first started moving around. Yeah. And you can find it every so often.
Yeah. But it's not a custard. It's like what you think it would be, like a wet cake.
You know what? It's like literally if you just dip cake in milk, that's your texture. It's going to be wet. It is freaking delicious.
So good. And you can make so many variations on this.
Absolutely. You can make a chocolate tres leches cake. You can make a strawberry tres leches. You could throw strawberries on there. Some people, I did see some recipes where people like to sprinkle cinnamon on top of the cake. I've never seen that, but sure.
You know what? It's like super easy, which I've done. Just like how you're saying, coconut tres leche, by adding coconut milk, coconut sweetening, whatever. There's like a sweeter coconut. What is that shit called? You put it in coquito, coconut cream. That's it right there. Yeah. And those things are so available now that honestly, there's no reason not to. And you can always toast the coconut and then sprinkle it like gingerly on top and make it feathery and like super angelic. I think I don't even like coconut, but the look of a coconut tres leche is beautiful. It's like ethereal.
It is.
I love it.
I'm okay with coconut. I'm not a big fan of shredded coconut.
I'm not either.
I'm not a huge, I like the flavor of coconut, but I don't like the actual consumption of the fruit. It's really kind of odd texture.
Plastic. It's fucking plastic. But that's why I like to toast it, because it does bring like a crunch to it where it's like more palatable, but still looks beautiful on top of this thing.
It really is. And this, like you said, you could just do so many variations to it. And it can be a lot of fun. And I think what's great about this is, again, this is stuff that most of us have in our homes. We have milks. At least me and Mari, condensed milk, because we're always baking something. Right. And it's quick and easy. Super cheap. What I like about this cake is you can make it days ahead before you serve it. And that's what's great about this. And, like I said, with Cuban food, it's cheap. This is food that you had to use all your supplies to create something. You didn't have the luxury of letting a supply go to waste.
Right. Totally. Most Cuban food is also like these type of ingredients where a lot of them are pantry items, cans, right? Like a lot of Cuban food is like that because of the history of the island, which I think is super interesting, right? How we global us, can create really anything that we want out of whatever is available to us and make it fucking delicious. That is beautiful. Yes. I love peasant dishes. Not that these are, I wouldn't say they're peasant dishes, but I do enjoy simple dishes like this.
Cuban food, I've noticed, is something that you can't make fancy and still make it good. It is simple food. And if you try to make it fancy, it just can go wrong.
It cheapens
it cheapens. Exactly. It's not going to taste it. but I think the culture of food that you and I grew up in, Mari, was a real blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it was a lot of fun to be able to experience that.
Flavor, right?
Yes.
I think a lot of people don't know what flavor is. They think it's salt, and it's not. And that's why I think Americans are so unhealthy. Not that Cubans are any better, probably.
Right. We can get into the fact we don't eat a vegetable, but
or it comes from a can.
Right, exactly. Or where there's 4 starches on your plate.
I retract that stupid bitch statement.
That's like your word of like the past 2 weeks. Everything's a bitch something. It was like a bitch pie.
Oh, that's right. I thought that was clever, though.
A bitch everything. So
bitch pie is delicious.
I think a lot of people don't understand one thing about Cuban food is one thing that's, Mexican American food is very popular in America.
Yeah, totally.
And Cuban American food is not. And that's fine because it's very regional. But what I think is interesting about Cuban food that people have a misconception who's never had it, it's not spicy.
No.
It's flavorful.
Right.
It's extremely flavorful. And it's not spicy, and it's stuff you can just use in your home.
Yeah, easily accessible things.
To make it, exactly.
Like here we talk about the bread for a Cuban sandwich, or there are some things that you won't be able to get in, Iowa or Wisconsin or anywhere that isn't Miami.
Or even DC.
But you can absolutely replicate 80% of the flavors because it's a lot of these tins and listen, all the spices that I use regularly are the spices that you probably use regularly.
Absolutely.
And they're all part of Cuban cuisine.
Absolutely.
Paprika, cumin, salt, garlic. I mean, it's pretty universal. It's universal food.
Bay leaves.
Yeah, which I think is in most cuisines.
It's most cuisines and it's in most of people's homes.
Right. And I say that to say that you can do this. It is not out of your wheelhouse. And you don't even have to know what it tastes like as a point of reference for it to be good to you.
Correct. Just have fun with it. And let's put it this way. When our grandparents and our parents were in Cuba, they did not go to a grocery store to buy things for a recipe. It was in their home.
Right.
And that's what they created. So I think that's what everybody can have fun with, that if you don't have one of the items, don't go out and buy it. It's in your home, put it together, and it'll still be delicious.
We talked about this the other day. I want to have an entire episode based on substitutions.
Right, that could be fun.
Because I think people worry too much about shit in the recipe and they don't feel the power to do something else and still have it turn out delicious.
As long as it's not baking, you don't need to be precise.
Totally. Right.
Baking's the only thing you need to be a little bit more precise with. Absolutely. If you're just cooking, add what you think tastes good. And if it tastes good to you, that's all that matters.
You're eating it.
Yeah, I'm not eating it. You are.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Wait, Mari.
What?
I have to tell them the secret if you're at a real Cuban restaurant or not.
Okay, that's right.
I have to tell. We don't have time for me to go over all the stories of all the places I've lived and had to travel and thought I was at a Cuban restaurant and it was not. But I'm going to tell you the one thing, especially, okay, so 2 things to know when you're at a real Cuban restaurant. When you get to this restaurant and they say it's a Cuban restaurant, you're going to ask 2 things. One thing, where are they getting their bread? There's a Cuban restaurant not too far from here. It's in Maryland. It's called Cuba de Ayer.
Yeah.
Like Cuba, yesterday or past. So it's in Burtonsville, Maryland. Really good Cuban restaurant. 2 things I asked them the first time I ever went. One thing is, where do they get their bread from? And they got their bread from a bakery in Miami, makes the dough for them. And then it's flown up and they bake it. So that's number 1.
Amen.
Number 2, I looked on the menu and my favorite non-alcoholic Cuban drink is called Materva.
Oh, yeah.
It's Materva, Materva. Materva. Yeah. And it's a soda and it's made out of the mate plant.
Yeah.
And it's super sweet. It's really good. It's 200 calories, but it's totally worth it. And if they have that or Jupina, which is a pineapple soda, I think it's gross.
But
thank God we agree on that. I was so nervous we were not going to agree on this.
I don't like any of that stuff.
God, you don't like Materva either?
It's okay. I don't like soda.
You know what? Your Hispanic card just got taken away.
Why? Why?
Because
soda
Materva is delicious. Are you serious?
No, it's too sweet. Don't like. But that shit might be good. Braising beef or something. Have you ever thought about that?
No.
I would do that anyway.
I don't know. People put Dr. Pepper on beef, so maybe.
Yeah, it's a thing, right?
Materva might be something okay. Anyways, ask those 2 things. If they have Materva, And if their Cuban bread is really Cuban bread,
you're
you're
in.
in a Cuban restaurant. And just let you know, I love tacos, but there are no tacos at a Cuban restaurant.
Ever.
That was served to me once in New Hampshire. That's a whole other story. But anyway.
It's sad. But it's hard. It's hard to
It
know
is
the truth.
All right. So that's my secret. So now it's out.
Well, thank you for outing the secret, because I feel like it's really important to know if you're getting legit shit. At least you know, right? Half the battle is knowing.
That's right. Absolutely.
Anyway, we hope you're enjoying this time with us as we talk about our roots through our food, which is really the most important way we express ourselves. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave us a review. Reach out to us on any number of ways that you'll find down in the show notes. And we can't wait to keep talking about this with you guys. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.